We're here again today in Conroe, Texas. We're here at the cemetery at the gravesite of the Vetter brothers. Both boys were born with a rare disorder called Severe Combined Immune Deficiency, or SCID. The older brother lived to be about 6 months old, while the younger David Philip Vetter, also known as the Bubble Boy, was 12 years old and passed away due to complications resulting from a surgery to try to cure his SCID. After his brother was born, his parents were told there was a 50% chance that any male would be born with SCID. And when his mother was pregnant with David, they decided to go ahead and run safety precautions and had a very clean and sterile environment for his birth, and he was immediately put inside that environment. He spent the rest of his life inside a clean room or a clean suit. He passed away, like I said, after the results of a surgery from bone marrow to try to resolve his disease. He did leave a legacy here in Texas and the rest of the world. There is a elementary school in the Woodlands named for him, as well as a museum and a street named for him in Shenandoah, Texas. There is also a charity organization to help those affected by SCID. There is now a screening that can be done for newborns to see if they have SCID, and bone marrow transplant offers a chance to have it cured. Because of his life and all that they learned, they've been able to help many people. His legacy has lived on. His mother and sister still are heavily involved with the fun run that is organized every year for David, as well as the newborn screening process here in Texas. We're going to move now to the museum and David Memorial Drive in Shenandoah, Texas. Now in Shenandoah, Texas, at the corner of David Memorial and Tamina Road. The street is named for David. We're at the Visitor Center for Shenandoah, and in there is a museum. Let's walk inside.
David Philip Vetter was born September 21st, 1971, to David and Carol Ann Vetter, residents of unincorporated Montgomery County, Texas, what is now Shenandoah. David and Carol Ann, like many young couples, dreamed of one day having a large family with many children, and all was going to plan until the birth of their first son, David Joseph Vetter, who tragically died at only 7 months old due to complications from what was later diagnosed as severe combined immunodeficiency, or SCID, a rare genetic disorder that suppresses the victim's immune system, leaving them defenseless against infection. Devastated from their loss, David and Carol Ann wondered if they should try again to conceive. Already the parents of a healthy daughter named Catherine, they consulted doctors who explained that any boy born to the couple had a 50-50 chance of having SCID. One of those doctors, Dr. Raphael Wilson, had experience working with SCID patients. Dr. Wilson had some success with 2 cases where he placed patients in a device he called a sterile plastic isolator. Essentially, a bubble made of transparent polyvinyl chloride film and inflated with filtered air, 100% isolated from the outside world. Taking no chances, David was delivered in a completely sterile operating room via C-section. The boy taken directly from his mother's womb and placed in the sterile plastic isolator. Soon, everyone's worst fear was realized when David, too, was diagnosed as having SCID. Now, this isolator, this tiny bubble, will have to be David's home, and doctors will be forced to find a matching bone marrow donor before David can live safely outside of it. Until then, everything that David touched, food, clothes, toys, had to be placed inside a chamber filled with ethylene oxide gas, heated to 140 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 hours, then aerated for 1 to 7 days in filtered air before entering the bubble. While David's doctors were busy looking for a donor, David's story gained worldwide attention, known only to the public as David for the family's privacy. He soon gained the nickname the Bubble Boy, becoming part of popular culture through national headlines and later television and movies. As months turned into years, the sterile plastic isolator, meant to be a temporary measure, was slowly becoming David's permanent home. As promised new technologies and techniques failed to produce a cure or a donor. David's first few years were spent under the watchful eye of Dr. Jack Montgomery, Dr. Mary Ann South, and the dutiful staff of the Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas. As it became clear that David would not leave the bubble anytime soon, engineers designed and built an enclosure for David's family's home. Now, David can spend time with his family, attend school via phone, and attempt to live as normal a life as possible. In 1977, NASA scientists developed and built a $50,000 mobile biological isolation system, dubbed the spacesuit, that allowed David to venture outside of his home for short periods of time. In 1983, 12 years after Dr. Wilson placed him in the sterile plastic isolator, David's doctors announced the date for the boy's bone marrow transplant. Scientists had at last found a way to transplant bone marrow that wasn't an exact match. Finally, David's older sister could donate the marrow he needed to jumpstart his immune system. David received his transplant, and the world waited with hopeful optimism. Everyone praying the little boy they only knew as David, the Bubble Boy, would be able to leave the polyvinyl chloride film walls of the isolator and join the world we all know and take for granted. A world of touch. Walking in green grass, feeling a warm summer's breeze. All things David never knew. For the first few months after the transplant, everything looked as if it was going all right. But then, David got sick. For the first time ever. A virus, laying dormant and undetectable in his sister's donated marrow, devastated David's defenseless body. First a fever, then internal bleeding. Doctors, having a hard time treating David through the bubble, try to convince him for the first time to come out. In so much pain, David agrees to let the doctors remove him from his bubble. For the very first time, free from the isolator, David was breathing unfiltered air. His mother, after 12 years of waiting, was finally able to hold David and kiss him for the first and the last time. Shortly after removal from the isolator, David slipped into a coma that he would never wake from. 15 days after leaving his bubble, David Philip Vetter had passed away. David Philip Vetter, the only recorded case of a human being living their entire existence isolated from their environment. Although cut off from the world around him, David had a huge impact on it. His life inside the bubble led to insights and discoveries in the fields of immunology, hematology, psychology, and the most important, David's autopsy revealed cancerous tumors all through his body. David had died from cancer. This led to the discovery that a virus can cause cancer in the human body. David's life was filled with love and people who did their very best to give him as close to normal a life as possible. A family that loved him. A community of doctors, specialists, engineers, and a world praying for this special boy. A world that still benefits from having known David.
We are now here in the Woodlands at David Elementary, located off Shadow Bend Drive. I want to make a comment about the two employees that helped me at the visitor center in Shenandoah. They were great, and inside they had the video presentation with some facts and artifacts around the TV about David and some personal effects of his. I encourage you to go check it out if you're in the area. It only takes a few minutes and it's well worth the time. I wanted to show you this in the entrance of the school. There is a nice picture of David there, right as you enter the school. Thought it was a fitting tribute to him and the legacy that lives on. I like the mission of the school and the comments that from his mother. I think it's very fitting to put this in the video. Here we are at the front of David Elementary School. It was actually established here in 1990, just a few years after his death. And I always find it interesting it's named David Elementary for his first name, simply because he was known as the boy named David. It's grades kindergarten through 4th grade for Conroe ISD. Well, that'll end our tour today. I hope you enjoyed it. And our history we saw today was not very long ago, but it was really worldwide history more than it was Texas history. Until next time, as we take another walk through Texas history.